Once upon a time, in a realm far away, nestled between rolling hills and whispering willows, lived a farmer named Torin. Now Torin wasn't your average farmer. He was known throughout the village of Oakhaven for his uncanny ability to grow crops that were the envy of the entire kingdom. His fields overflowed with produce. His livestock bore more offspring than any other in the village, and his fruit trees bore an abundance of sweet, juicy fruit. In fact, it was said that if you ate one of Torin's apples, you'd have enough honey to last a whole year. And no one knew why. Everyone in Oakhaven thought Torin's success came from hard work and dedication, but they didn't know the real reason. Every full moon, when the silver light bathed the earth in its ethereal glow, Torin would disappear from his farmhouse, leaving behind only a note for his wife and a faint trace of magic. For Torin had a secret, one he'd kept hidden for years, fearing it might drive a wedge between him and the only life he'd ever known. You see, Torin wasn't just a farmer. He was a warrior, a protector of the realms, sworn to defend the world from the encroaching darkness. But how did this unassuming farmer balance his double life? Well, that required a great deal of planning and a pinch of fairy magic. Now, normally this wouldn't be a problem. The darkness always retreated at the first hint of dawn, allowing Torin to return home without raising suspicion. But this time was different. This time the darkness lingered, oozing into the daylight like a venomous snake. And that meant Torin had to make a choice. Should he abandon his post, his duty, his oath, or should he reveal his secret to his wife and risk losing her in the process? He looked at the worried face of his wife and felt his heart crack. He loved Ilara more than anything in the world. The thought of losing her, unbearable. But he couldn't abandon his post. Not now. Not when the fate of the world hung in the balance. With a deep breath, he made his decision. Taking Ilara's hand, he told her everything. His adventures, his battles, his duty. To his surprise, she didn't laugh, didn't cry, didn't even faint. She simply nodded, understanding dawning in her eyes. "So this is why you disappear every full moon," she whispered, more to herself than to him. "And this is why our anniversary was always the day after the full moon." Her voice trembled slightly, but her eyes were resolute. "Don't worry, Torin, I won't tell anyone, not even the chickens," she said, winking, making him smile despite the gravity of their situation. But while Ilara was accepting, their young son Finn wasn't. The kid had been trained by Torin to never speak of his father's absences. It was too dangerous. But hearing his father was a warrior, a protector, a hero, well, that sent him into a tizzy. Finn wanted to go with his father. He wanted to see the battles, to feel the thrill of adventure. But Torin knew better than to let his son accompany him. It was too risky. Magic could corrupt even the purest of hearts. How could he protect his son from that? As the battle raged outside, Torin and Ilara prepared their son for the possibility of his father's death. They didn't want to scare him, but they needed to be honest. "If your father doesn't come back, you must be brave," Finn Ilara told him, hugging him tightly. "He's a hero and so are you." Then they sat down together to wait. The battle lasted for what seemed like hours, though in reality, it was only a few minutes. When Torin finally returned, his armor dented, his clothes torn, but his spirit unbroken, Finn ran to him, throwing his arms around his father's leg. "You're back," he exclaimed, looking up at him with wide, shining eyes. "Did you fight? Did you win?" Torin knelt down and hugged his son, feeling a warmth spread through his chest. He'd faced countless battles, vanquished mythical beasts, and saved the world more times than he could remember. But nothing had ever felt as rewarding as this. That's when he noticed something strange. A faint golden glow surrounded Finn, a glow that seemed to emanate from within. He looked at his wife Ilara, and she had the same glow about her. Had they both been hiding this? Were they both touched by magic? Before he could question them, the villagers arrived, led by their chief, Gareth. "Torin, thank goodness you're back," Gareth said, rushing towards him. "We heard the darkness was upon us and we feared the worst. You saved us, Torin, all of us." The villagers cheered, their faces filled with gratitude and admiration. Torin blushed, embarrassed by the attention. He was just doing his duty, that's all. But then Gareth stepped closer, his expression turning serious. "There's something you need to see," he said, gesturing towards the center of town where a crowd had gathered. Torin followed his gaze, and his heart skipped a beat. Standing in the middle of the crowd was a figure he knew all too well. His old nemesis Malazar, the very embodiment of the encroaching darkness, and beside him stood someone even more unexpected, someone he thought he'd never see again. It was Torin's brother, Torin, who'd abandoned their village years ago to join the ranks of the Dark Mages. Torin whispered, his voice hoarse with disbelief. What, in oblivion? Why is he here? How could his own flesh and blood, his own brother, betray him like this? Malazar turned towards Torin, a cruel smile twisting his lips. Well, if it isn't the legendary hero of Oakhaven, he sneered. Come to save the day, I presume. Torin's jaw clenched, his fingers curled into fists. He wanted to rush forward and rip his brother's head off, but he knew that would be a mistake. Malazar raised his hand, and suddenly, the ground beneath Torin's feet began to shake. A massive chasm opened up, and from its depths, a horde of grotesque creatures emerged, their eyes glowing red, their mouths filled with sharp teeth, their claws dripping with venom. Looks like our little hero is outnumbered, Malazar taunted. Give up, Torin. There's no way you can win. But Torin wasn't listening. He was staring at the ground, his eyes wide with dawning realization. That's when he noticed something strange, something he'd missed before. The creatures emerging from the chasm weren't mindless monsters. They were actually villagers, Oakhaven's finest warriors, transformed into twisted parodies of themselves by dark magic. His gaze snapped back to Malazar, who was watching him with a mixture of amusement and triumph. You see, Torin, I've been planning this for a long time, Malazar explained, his voice dripping with malice. I've been corrupting your precious village, turning your friends and neighbors into my puppets. And now I'm going to destroy you, to end you just as you ended our father. The truth hit Torin like a physical blow. All this time he'd been fighting to save his village, to protect his friends and neighbors, and all along they'd been his enemies. It was a betrayal that cut deeper than any sword, a deception that shook him to his core. Then, as if sensing his turmoil, Alara stepped forward, her eyes blazing with righteous anger. You'll pay for this, Torin, she hissed, her voice like ice. You and Malazar will both pay dearly. And that's when Torin spoke up. His voice was no longer the jovial, carefree sound Torin remembered. It was now a raspy, distorted echo of its former self. Ilara, long time no see, he said, a cruel smile spreading across his face. Fancy meeting you here. What have you done to him? Torin demanded, his voice echoing with barely restrained power. Torin shrugged, his smile widening. Oh, just a little magic, brother dear. Just a little persuasion. He'll be joining me soon enough. And with that, he vanished, leaving Torin to face the horrifying truth. Their seemingly idyllic village was a nest of vipers. His brother and his supposed friends and allies were traitors, and the world, once again, was hanging in the balance. And as Torin looked into the twisted, corrupted eyes of his fellow villagers, he knew that this battle was far from over. It was just beginning.